This is the Other 22 Hours podcast.
Hey, and welcome to today's episode of the Other 22 Hours podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Shafer-Haiss.
And I'm your other host, Michaela Anne. And this is our second year of the Other 22 Hours. And we are so happy to still be here and really thankful that you are here with us.
Yeah, we're keenly aware that we can't make this show happen without you guys being here. And even a small show like ours takes a lot to put on. Though we're all very familiar with the world of streaming royalties, we've come to learn that a lot of people don't realize that podcast streaming pays absolutely $0. And so with that, we want to enlist you guys, our listeners, to help us with our show. The easiest thing to do would be to follow or subscribe on your listening or watching platform of choice. It's a great way to let the algorithm know that we're worth 45 minutes of a new listener's time. The second thing to do would be to take your favorite episode, whether it's this one or one of the 60 other episodes we have, and share that with somebody that doesn't know about our show. And lastly, if you'd like to directly support our show, we have a Patreon. Most podcasts support themselves by selling ads, and we don't want to interrupt these conversations and hawk you things that you might not need. So with that, we started a Patreon community, and over there you can get things like behind the scenes footage that we sometimes cut out. We announce our guests early so that you have an opportunity to ask them questions directly. If you're interested in that, there's a link below in the show notes.
And one of the things we really pride ourselves on for this podcast is that we aren't music journalists. So these aren't album-based interviews talking about how each artist made the latest record or promoting current tours. We are musicians ourselves. And these conversations are about creativity in general and how we survive and thrive in a life that is building a career around our art.
And as we all know, that is an insane thing to try to do. Most of it is outside of our control. And so we like to keep our show focused on what is within our control. That kind of ends up being our mindsets, our routines, our habits, our creativity in general. And we've boiled that down to the question, what do you do to create sustainability in your life so that you can sustain your creativity? And today there are three guests, the sisters known as Joseph.
Yeah, Joseph is a family band, three sisters, originally from Portland, Oregon, and they have been a band for 12 years. They're coming up on their 10-year anniversary of their first album and going to be going on a big tour in the fall. They have put out 3 records on ATO. They've performed on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, later with Jools Holland, Ellen, Conan, CBS This Morning, The Today Show. They've performed at every major festival, Coachella, Lollapalooza, Newport, Bonnaroo, Glastonbury, toured with James Bay, Amos Lee, The Shins. They, on paper, have reached heights of success. And it's incredible. But this conversation is so much more than that. And it feels really special that we were able to sit with them for this hour.
Yeah, those of you that are longtime fans of Joseph may have noticed that they just announced recently that one of the sisters has chosen to leave the band. And we are honored that they were open to sitting with us and chatting about not only the development of the band and the ups and downs that Michaela just mentioned, but also how they handled that news, how they came to that conclusion together and separately, and how that has already affected their creativity. Past, present, future, all of it. It is really an amazing look into the lives of creatives and different things we have to navigate. And we're just honored to be able to share this conversation with you guys. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Joseph.
So where are you guys today?
We're home in Oregon, and I am in LA right now.
Nice. And you guys have lived in separate places for a while, correct?
Yeah, we have. Since the second that we moved out of our parents' house, we all were living there right at the beginning just so that we could do it full time when we were making zero money. And the second that we were making enough money to move out, we've been in different places.
Oh, wow.
How does that affect the creative process? Do you guys schedule time to write together, or is it kind of like write separately and bring it together and carve out that way?
Yeah, it's both, because writing happens when we're not together, but then our process as a band, our best stuff comes from when we schedule, not only just with us, but with other co-writers. That's our favorite way to make stuff happen, and that's usually just in a concentrated writing camp 7-day stretch. And then for practicing, we are woefully bad at it. And so we usually don't schedule enough time. And then the days before tour, we'll get together and maybe go through it once. And then really the first show is the chopping block moment. So if you ever come to the first show on our tour, you know that maybe schedule for the next one.
Yeah.
I honestly love to hear that because I felt guilty for a long time. I just dread rehearsals. I'm like, I don't like to practice. But I recently heard Bonnie Raitt on Wiser Than Me podcast talk about how she doesn't like to practice. She's like, I'm not sitting around my house noodling away, playing through stuff. She's like, I only practice when I have to get ready to go on tour. And all I like to do is perform live.
Oh,
That's
okay.
awesome.
Vindicated. That's incredible.
Yeah. I think it's more common than you would think. As a recovering serial sideman, I've been in so many situations that are just like, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. You know, like I was filling in with this band. I'll say it. They won't care. I subbed one show for JD McPherson, and it was the only time they'd ever had a sub in the band. And I flew out and met them in Denver, and they're like, we'll have plenty of time. Like, we'll load in early. We'll run through the set, like all of that. And what that meant is I flew in the night before, and we spent the morning cross-loading their stuff from their van into their bus that they were moving into.
Oh my God.
And then went to the venue and set up and played for 20 minutes for like a 90+ minute set the day before their record came out.
Oh no.
It was great. Probably after the first song, JD was like, hey, you might notice the drummer looks different. That's Aaron. I'm like, cool, great. I know, I'm really sweating. But it was totally fine. And we finished with the set, and I looked over, and Jason, their drummer at the time, was back already and was standing side stage. And I was just like, oh,
Good.
Oh, so then he was watching you.
oh yeah. Yeah. Luckily, they're all like the sweetest people. And the good thing about it being such a long running band with no subs is I couldn't fuck it up that bad, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All that to say is I think like the no rehearsing thing is more common than you would think.
Yeah.
I was in conversation with a friend of ours the other day who he plays in other people's projects as violin, and in his band, he was here for that band, and he was like, oh my gosh, we barely have any time to practice. It's really stressful. I was like, oh, what do you have? And he was like, 6 days. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, what do you do in your main band? And he was like, we practice for like 2 weeks straight before tour.
Shit.
And I was like, you must sound incredible right out the gate. Like,
Yeah.
I was blown away by that.
I can also
makes me
imagine.
feel bad.
I mean, when the core of the,
Shoot.
yeah. But I mean, like when the core of the band, when you guys are all sisters.
Because you guys tour with just the three of you, or sometimes you have a full band, right?
Yeah.
It's the same as far as your approach.
No, when we tour with the band, we have practice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
We build it in when it's the full polished thing. And we've hired MDs for that in the past. And that gets everything like tightened up. But when it's just the three of us, it'll literally be like, we show up and we're like, we know it.
We're good.
So you guys have been a band for 10 years, and you have your
Wow.
big 12 years?
This is our
Oh.
10-year anniversary of our first album, but we've been doing
Oh.
it since 2012.
Wow.
Cool.
Okay. Your guys' story is so interesting because you had your like blow up moment very early on. And I'm always so curious of what that ride is like. Any pressure to redo it every time and beat it. How has that evolved for you guys over the past decade?
I love that. Surprisingly, no one really asked us that question.
Really?
Right?
Oh.
You guys? I feel like
We also, like, not to toot our own horn, I feel like every episode people are like, no one's ever asked me that. And I'm like, is it literally because interviewers are usually not musicians? So it's just
Yeah.
like,
Right.
we're like asking the questions that we want to know for ourselves, that we
Yeah.
wonder about other people's experience, and we wonder for ourselves. I don't
We
know.
also don't read any of the press releases that publicists send us.
that's the whole thing then. That's why you ask great questions. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this, Meek and Al, but I have thought about it over the years and been like, I don't think we knew what it meant when it happened. Because we went straight from, we had done this house show tour and we were working a lot. We would send electronic press kits to venues in the Pacific Northwest, try to get on things, but nothing. So we were like, all right, we have to like build this ourselves. And then when our agent started working with us, he helped start booking things. But then it felt like when we had a song #1 on AAA radio, all of us were just like, well, I guess that's just what happens. And then in the subsequent records, when that hasn't happened, we're like, oh, we didn't know what that really meant and kind of what that was. So it's been interesting to try and not hold yourself to that every single time and not feel like what you've done or what you're achieving is less, because it doesn't do that. And to be like, actually, we have an incredible audience that continues to just slowly build because people are really invested, and not even just for one song, but for like whole records. And that is the thing that when I really settle into it and think about it is like, oh my God, that's the success right there. I don't know what your guys' experience is.
Yeah, we just didn't know. So I think especially the album after that, Good Luck Kid, I think I was like, okay, great. And then this is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. And I think there were definite moments of disappointment of just, oh, did we do something wrong? Just really second guessing ourselves. And then having moments of just really having to come back to ourselves and be like, let's just make something we like. And then who knows what'll happen.
You're like, well, this happened because it's supposed to, and because we're good and our music's good and all that. And then it doesn't happen again because who knows?
We're bad.
Because like who knows what?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, just completely personalizing the whole thing.
Well, also personalizing it, because I feel like I have never had that height of buzz and success that you guys had, but I've had little pockets of things where then when it didn't happen the next album, I really was like, even down to individuals. But you were so supportive last time, and now you're like not even, do you hate me now? Did I offend them? Is the record so bad that they are just like, no, you can make yourself crazy. But I think maybe the reason interviewers don't always ask that question is we kind of on the outside think success is only great. And what we see as success of being number one on AAA radio, playing all the late night TV, that can only be great. How could anybody have anything but gratitude and happiness around that?
Oof.
And one of the reasons we like these conversations in this podcast is I feel like the older you get in this business, the more you create and put music out in a professional way, the more you learn how much nuance there is and just how it is not black or white, and how the things that we come up when we're first starting out that we think is the goal might not be our goal. I made a note to bring up, we were on Kayamo together last year. I hung out with your mom a lot because she had your niece. And also I just have a habit of befriending everyone's mothers.
Yeah, that's the demographic.
That's my prime. I think, Natalie, when I saw you at your Nashville show, you were like, do you have my number? And I was like, no, but I have your mom's. She was talking to me about your guys' trajectory and stuff, and she made a comment. She was like, their first record blew up and it was so overwhelming and big, and then the second record, it wasn't the same, and that was challenging and difficult. And then they're starting in this third record and there's excitement of things growing, but that's also scary. And I didn't get to like dig into it with her, but I'm so curious what your guys' feelings and perspectives are on what are the both sides. If it goes really well and we gain even more heights and success, what is scary about that?
I think one thing that's really is so difficult, honestly, about the thing that we do is everything has metrics. Everything has numbers. Everything is a definable, like, you sold this many tickets, you have this many streams, you have this many followers on social media. I think it can be really difficult to be so aware of that. And we're making art, but it's also, we live in this world and it's a business. And so you also have everyone partnering with you very aware of those numbers as well. And one thing that we've never really gotten away from is a sense of, are we going to be able to sell enough tickets? And from our team, like, we've never hit that ease of we don't have anything to worry about, which maybe no one ever does. Maybe if you're Lizzo or Casey Musgraves, you still are worried about something else. But it's such a mental thing that you have to shift, because ultimately one person, one main character of an entire life story showed up to your thing. It's astounding when you really think about the fact that like even one person moved their entire life around to be in the same room that night, and just how sacred that is, and trying to hold as much reverence as is possible without all those other things. You know, you sold 600, but not 1,000.
And those numbers just keep getting bigger.
Exactly.
It always does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
you sold 1,000, but not 2,000.
Right. Exactly. And then you're just like 1,000 tickets. It can be so easy to lose perspective, and not to mention the actual making and performing of the thing that is the whole reason why you're there, which is to connect with yourself and each other and everyone, and making sure that has all of your energy. It can get so in the weeds. The idea of moving your career forward and having success comes with all of this fear that you have to constantly be creating a container to keep it out of your brain.
I think you, Natalie, carry that a lot. Whereas my first thing to that question is just, maybe Allie would say the same, is like, with more success comes a lot more time away from home. And especially as we're older, that's a different sacrifice now. When we were younger and we were like living at our parents' house, you know, maybe we had partners at the time, but we're all in our 30s and it's a way different. Those years we were doing 280 days on the road, 265. And I'm like, I cannot do that now. But would that kind of success require that? And what would you have to give up if you did? You know, it's like a balance of...
That's true.
I just wonder, like, oh, could I even? Or is there a way to have that success and not do what we did the one time we really did have it?
My question would be, who told us that success would require that?
I feel like for us, it was like, you have to keep the momentum going. You just have to say yes to everything. And like, we got so burnt out after the White Flag album that I'll speak for myself, but I was like, I need a break. I'm going to die if I don't take a break. But then we took a very long break. The pandemic happened and we put out an album, the Good Luck Kid album after that.
It was 3 years between album cycles, but we were touring our asses off for 2 of those years. And then we took a break and then made the album. And people were like, how come it was 3 years between your 2 albums? Yeah, you're like, because we were on the road and then we had to make another one.
And the pandemic happened. So it was just so intense. Then you sit back and wonder, you're like, was it because we took the break that we needed that the next album didn't have the momentum? Because everybody keeps saying that, follow the momentum, and maybe we stopped it too soon. And then,
even though we were dying.
Yeah.
Right. It's all complicated, but I do feel like it's a lot of what like the industry says is don't ever say no, always say yes to everything because you don't want to miss an opportunity that could be like the moment for you.
Yeah, which blows my mind. I understand that from like a capitalistic sense,
right?
And a produce thing, but like I love Lucinda Williams and she rarely puts out records. There's big gaps.
That's actually not true.
Well, the records I like the most that she has put out, there was a lot of space on either side.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of the Northwest, I love the Shins.
Yeah.
James Mercer like rarely puts out records. And then like Fiona Apple.
Oh, yeah. But I think when I ask like who told us this, I know exactly who told us this. The business people told us this.
100%.
Yeah. And I think these conversations for us are like, how do you continue to create and be an artist in a viable way that like you can still be in the community that you love and working and convince business people that you're valid so that you can have support, but also maintain your humanity and your soul when I'm continuously seeing just how completely at odds what the music industry demands from artists and bands are with being healthy human beings, and just like how so much of what we accept as the way to do things is pretty, in my personal opinion, toxic and like at odds with being a spiritually evolved, healthy person.
Ugh, yeah.
I'm like, there has to be another way. I feel like Wiser Than Me, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's podcast should be a sponsor of this, our tiny little baby podcast.
I love it.
But I listened to Patti Smith on that podcast. And, you know, Patti Smith famously left the music business and public life to raise a family and get married. And she talks about it, how she just got trashed by the media. And that when she came back, the only reason she says she came back is because her husband died and she needed to make money. And she had young children. She said that she got asked all the time, like, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? You haven't done anything. And she's like, what have I been doing? I've been writing every single day. I've been growing as a human being. I've been raising children. And she's so adamantly like, fuck you guys. Like, she's... So that's something to stay with me when I start to hear these thoughts in my own head of, oh my God, too much time is passing by. You're going to just be starting back at the beginning.
When I really think about it and I try to get out of my head just the ways that it is supposed to be, what the lockstep workman thing to do is, and I really think about who is our audience And what is our relationship to them? Everyone has their own lives. They're living and they're not thinking like, what's Joseph doing right now? But how do we stay connected to them, and how much of ourselves do we share, and how much of it is about the thing that we've made, and that being the thing that provides value and means something to people, and how much of that is a communal connection. And ultimately, I've been thinking about this as we're moving toward what's next and thinking like, okay, well, how do we make that be the like guiding light of all of the things that we do? Like, to me, this is such an example of that. Yes, I want to have a long form conversation with lovely people where if any of our audience wants to know in a deeper, more personal way, like this is an opportunity to be connected to them. But I think wanting to like decide what we say yes and no to, basing on how do we stay connected, and everyone has a different way. But social media, it's hard. That's like our main tool, when it used to be like publications and things your publicists would find. And now the personal thing on social media can be incredible and also so difficult. It's a whole own thing. I want that to be the guiding light of what keeps our relationship with the people who care in a good place, and what's we don't need to do that.
With that, do you guys want to move into sharing what is next for you all?
Oh my gosh, yes.
This is the first time talking about it outside of my friends or family, or like the random person in town that knows way too much about my life.
Those are good people to have in your life.
The postmaster.
Well, you like run into someone in the store that you're like, I haven't seen you in months, and they like know this about me. And I'm like, what? Like, anyways. But yeah, I have decided to no longer carry on with my sisters. And it's incredibly scary and exciting and horrifying and all of the feelings all at once. The girls have been really, really supportive from the second that I told them. We all wept together for a while. That's the decision at the moment. So our fall tour will be my finale tour, but the girls have really exciting stuff on the horizon as well that I'm so fully in support of. And I think it's just next level Joseph as well. So it just feels like a good thing and exciting, but big change for all of us for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this something that you came to a conclusion about in conversation with everybody, or was it something that you've had in the back of your head and you kind of were just like, we need to talk?
It's something that I will say I've probably like thought about on and off over the years, but never really like took it seriously, because I really love what we do and I love being with my sisters, and I'm definitely a bit more of a homebody. And we get this question in like our meet and greets a lot, which is, what would you be doing if you weren't doing music? And I always was like, I'd probably hopefully own some land and like have animals and do something with herbs and whatnot. But I always felt bad that I said that instead of just, well, I'd be doing music. But that's the truth of it. And I think it's been something that has popped in and out of my head, but never seriously. And then there was a point where I think for me, I was like, maybe I can do music, but we can just restructure it a little bit in a way that I don't have to be on the road as much. And I feel like the more that I tried for that, it felt like it was going against the grain of what our band needed in order to make money. And then I took 6 months, June to Christmas, where I didn't talk to anybody about it, because I am someone that talks to everybody when I'm like trying to make a decision. And I was like, this is the biggest decision of my life in this moment. And I can't have anybody else's opinion on this, because if I make the decision to stay or to leave and I regret that in one way or the other, I don't want to have anybody to blame for that. I want to be able to just know that no matter what, it was my decision. And so that's what happened. And I was planning on telling the girls in February, but we're just all very close. So they started wondering maybe if something like that might happen. And so I ended up talking to them at Christmas, which has created an incredibly long runway of time between it actually happening and when the decision was made.
Natalie and I felt Allie stepping back, and we had a tour in the UK, October of 2023, and Natalie and I went to a bar. Allie had turned in early, and I think Natalie asked it. You were like, Megan, if Allie quits, do you want to still be in a band with me? And I was like, let's do it. So that was the first moment, and we didn't tell Al that we talked about that. But then one day I was in her kitchen, and I don't even know what we were talking about, but I just looked at Allie and I just said, hey, I just want you to know that you can quit the band and Natalie and I will be okay. Like we've already talked.
I think that was the scariest thing for me, like just feeling like I was going to like totally blow up their lives. They mean the world to me. And I think I got really afraid that like if I made that decision for myself, that it would end up being so selfish. Yeah, that like both of them or one of them would just feel totally crippled by that. That I was just taking so much away, that like we worked so hard for this and we have a lot of success. Even speaking earlier in the conversation, how we were like, yeah, like it hasn't been the same since White Flag, but like we have this weird thing where it's like all of these numbers that used to feel like, oh, those numbers being so high is what's showing us that we have success. Those numbers have been really low, but we're seeing more and more people come to our shows and more merch be sold than ever, which has been really interesting. So I think even in a weird moment, it felt like we still have so much momentum and I'm just going to rip the rug out from everyone.
But when I said that to you and I was just like, it's okay if you want to quit because Nat and I are going to be okay. Allie didn't respond. She just started crying. She was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it right now. But she was like, thanks for saying that. And in that moment, I was like, yeah, she's quitting.
Yeah.
Which I told Nat then later. I was like, I just wanted you to know that, yeah, she's going to quit. She hasn't said that in her words, but it's coming for sure.
Allie, you said you felt when you would share at a meet and greet that this whole other thing that you wanted to be doing, that you felt bad not saying, I would still be doing music. Through this process for yourself, has there grown more acceptance in you to have all of these other like loves and hobbies and sources of joy? And has it been a relief to accept that and look forward to having more time for that?
I will say yes. And it's all so complicated because the life that I'm moving toward is a life that I've been like thinking about and dreaming about for years and years. So there's like the freedom feeling. And then there's also the feeling of, holy shit, I have never done anything on my own in my adult life. And I could fail miserably and not know how to make money and do something embarrassing. And it's all up to me now versus, if we do something together, then it's kind of on all of us if it does well or doesn't. But now I'm like, oh my God, it's literally just me. I have to figure this out. So yes, I think it's been like total freedom and excitement. And oh my God, I can't believe I get to fully move toward these different dreams. And then there's moments where I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all the feelings. But yes, I think it's been really cool. And I think for me, music has always been my creative outlet. But I feel creative in a lot of other ways. Because of being in the band, I haven't really ever had time to take classes or anything like that. And now I'm home long enough that I'm taking 2 ceramic classes, which is really exciting. Different things like that I'm just trying to find my creativity in other ways.
I hear and can relate to all of that. It's a scary thing to grab the steering wheel and jerk it to the left. I've never done anything comparable to that, but having been on the road for years and then have to actually tangibly say no and stop that momentum to spend more time at home and be in my studio and make records. It was hard. And I wasn't able to do that fully until the pandemic. I started pulling back in 2018, 2019, I pulled back more. And the pandemic's like, are you going to do this or not? Here you go. Good luck. It is a scary thing to all of a sudden just be like, I'm going to, I guess, pull the parachute is the analogy that I want to use. But that takes a lot of strength. And I just want to say one thing I've thought about post-pandemic in everything shutting down, it messed up everybody's career trajectories and approaches and all of that so much. But there's something to be said about all of the different hats that we have to wear as musicians and the different skills that we develop in running a band and running a business and juggling all of this and the adaptability. You can only foresee so much and the rest is left up to chance. And so you have to be agile and adaptable. And I just see in all of my friends and all of our community, there's so many skills that we have just subliminally developed through all of that. I know we only know each other a tiny bit, but I would venture to guess that you have a lot of skills that are going to make this transition way more fruitful than you can even imagine right now.
That's so nice. Yeah. I'm hoping for that for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think sometimes there's this survivalist idea as musicians that it's a badge of honor to be there was nothing else I knew how to do in life. So it was music or nothing. So it can feel wait, am I not as legit if I have other interests? Am I not as worthy of success if I have other things I'm good at or that I love as much. And again, it's just like, wait, who's telling us that? Like,
wow.
We're creative human beings, all of us, not just artists. Humans are creative by being human. That's fine if some people believe that for themselves, but honoring that takes a lot of courage as well.
Yeah.
Natalie and Megan, do you guys want to talk a little bit about how you processed this and how do you balance the feelings of honoring each other's needs as sisters and separate individuals with your own expectations, hopes, and dreams career-wise, but also the personal expectations and hopes and dreams of doing things together as three sisters?
As you were talking, what came to mind, I definitely want to hear what you have to say to this too, Meeks. It's really interesting in my personal life because I also just went through a divorce in 2022. It's been really interesting how this theme is sort of happening for me and also in a lot of my friendships. I don't know if it's crossing the 35-year mark or what's going on, but basically with Al and all of us, a couple record cycles ago, we had so many things come up. It's wild when two people, let alone three, or, decide like, let's weave our worlds together and like make sure all of the things in our personal lives can support doing this together. So we've had multiple points throughout our career of like, hey, are we in this? Do we want it? Let's make this about wanting to and not about obligation. And I just really admire Al for like knowing her truth and knowing how to stay aligned in that, basically. That's just a beautiful thing that I've now seen her do, and I've seen some other friends and myself try to do, which is basically like, okay, this commitment that I made or this way that my life was structured is actually constricting and not allowing me to do what is aligned and what is singing and what is resonant. And I think the three of us all felt that together. This is not alive and breathing. This is happening in a way that it has to. And sometimes commitment can be beautiful in that way where it's like something might take you away, but you get this lovely like reliability of the thing. And then sometimes it just squeezes. And I think when I was seeing that in my sister and recognizing that not only for her life, if this squeezes her, then she doesn't get to soar and be everything that she can, but also like for the three of us, Joseph was not going to be alive, hungry, and real and vibrant if we were to keep moving within that commitment instead of within freedom. It's interesting because there's grief, 100%, as you say goodbye to the thing that has been. And part of it is really just, I can't believe that we've gotten to do this together. It's unbelievable to have gotten all of these memories together and all this time together. And I'm going to miss her so much. There's that just grief. And there's the fear of moving into the unknown because it's a totally different thing. With the three of us, I just know these harmonies are going to be fire. I just know it. I don't have to think about that at all. And Meeks and I now are going, okay, what is the noise we make? How is it different? It's going to have different strengths. It's not going to be the same. And so on a technical side, I realized Megan and Al being twins, the timbres of their voices have this incredible dynamic range of beautiful, bright belliness and warm, reedy wooden sounds, just like all blends. And Megan and I now are having to, on a technical side, go, okay, how do we get our sound to feel as smooth and blended? And we had some counsel from people that didn't want us to overemphasize this moment because the idea of it being an ending was going to be shooting ourselves in the foot for the future. But that really hasn't felt like the right thing for us because I think our audience and I think human beings can hold the nuance that so much can happen at once. You're not only sad. You're not only happy. It's all of it. That's life. We are grieving and we are excited and there's something to come and it's an ending and it's a beginning. And I'm trying to just welcome the whole range of experience that's coming with this. So it's complex and layered and happening all at once.
That's so beautifully said. There are multitudes to everything. And I think by smoothing over the transition and not making a big deal, you're missing out on so much. I mean, no matter like how much you talk or don't talk about it, it is a big change. What you guys have built and have done and have experienced should be honored. As you said, like alive and breathing, I think we'd be amiss to not include fans and the audience in that.
Yes.
And like their experience and the shows, they were incredible and they've grown and they've been a thing, and like honor that and like enjoy that, celebrate that. And then, you know, what is to come, I'm sure will also be amazing, but it'll be amazing in different ways. It'd be a crime to try to compare the two.
Yes.
I think also as a fan of your guys' music, your songs are so vulnerable and revealing, and you guys share so much of yourself through your music that it would feel off for you guys to not address it if Allie just started not being in pictures and be like, wait, what's happening?
It's really strange advice. But I'm like, I understand it on one side, but then I'm like, it's just not us.
Yeah.
But I would venture to guess that advice is coming from fear on their end. Don't rock the boat too much. Fear of what's to come. And it's like, yeah, of course there's fear, but excitement can feel like fear sometimes. And it's just fear of the unknown, which is just total human nature. I mean, Allie, you were saying you have fear of what's to come too, because who knows what it will be. But like, there's a lot of good there too.
I also think from my perspective, I understand it because it's business, right? The thought is like, yeah, let's not show our cards too much so that people don't think they gotta go. But I'm like, if we lose people over this, then we lose people over this. They like what was. That makes sense. They're not coming with us to the next thing. But it's so much more important relationally and just who we are between the three of us and who we are with our audience to bring everybody in. Let's all go down together if we're going to go down. You know, it's like, let's do it. I don't want to surprise anybody, and I don't want to lose out on celebrating what the last 12 years was with Al. And just be like, just kidding, she's not here. Like,
and ultimately, like, we've hired people to give us that kind of advice. Like, that is their job, to be like, hey, this is from this perspective. And ultimately, if you want to grow your thing, people who don't really care are just going to hear that and they're going to whatever. But I want us to be in relationship with the people who care and who are in and honor that relationship and be like, listen, we got to celebrate this moment because I want people to have their own feelings about it. Again, not like everyone's going around thinking about what's Joseph doing today, but those people who have those people who have invested and who care and who are going to really miss Allie like us, I want to be able to have that collective experience.
Well, yeah, and also to me, I think it's super interesting.
I do too.
I'm like, oh, what are they going to do next? You look at the staves, and I'm not really sure how they did that, but one of their members had a baby, I believe, and so now it's just two of them. And I really love their music, but I haven't checked out their stuff in a while. And when I saw, oh, it's just two of them, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, what does it sound like? What are they doing? How are they doing this? And all that stuff. So I think it's interesting.
I mean, all you got to do is bring up Fleetwood Mac. Everybody loves to talk about all the interpersonal things in Fleetwood Mac. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Not to mention the music that Megan and Natalie have made already is so incredible. It's every single song. It was really interesting to be on the outside. Like, I wasn't in any of the writing sessions, obviously, with them. And so it was weird to be home and then be getting the voice memos from the writing sessions and be like, oh my God, we just made this amazing song. And it was cool to get to listen to it without being in the session. And they've just written really incredible stuff that I just like as a person and also as a Joseph member. It's really good and it feels very consistent but new to like what we have been and what they are going to be. So it doesn't feel like it's this large departure, but it also feels like fresh and new. And I feel like our fans are going to be like obsessed anyways because it's just so good.
Was that like a new experience for you to be able to listen to these Joseph, I don't know why I'm doing air quotes, they are Joseph songs.
Joseph.
Yeah, but to be able to listen to these Joseph songs and not have that attachment of what's my part in this? Where do I sit? What's this going to be like on stage?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see like which things in the process make me emotional and which things don't. Like which things I'm like, oh, that's so cool to get to be like an outsider to that. And then other ones where I'm like, okay, that hurts a little bit, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
But that one was like, honestly, really fun because writing sessions are really hard and intense. Then all of a sudden they're fun. So I wasn't like missing out on the like hard part of it. So it felt really fun to just hear the outcome of all of that and hear their new sound without being a part of the moment. But yeah, that was interesting.
It sounds like you get to be the grandparent to the songs. You get to show up and like hang out and have all the fun when things get tough. You're like, no, I gotta go. See ya.
Grandpa Al.
Grandpa Al.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the really beautiful things I'm hearing from you guys is really just recognizing like, yeah, we're sad about this. Or yeah, I'm going to have moments where I feel left out, and like recognizing it and not being like, it's all either one or the other. It's really recognizing that life and every experience holds so much nuance. When feelings of conflict or resentment or anger ever come up, to be able to recognize them and not let them destroy moments, and how you guys, especially as sisters, have grown to work through that as also bandmates. Have there ever been any moments of that kind of stuff?
Yes. With anything, any kind of working or familial relationship, you get enough years under your time together, and there are stories of repeat dynamics or roles or lettings down. And I literally the other day had a thing where I fell into a story that was old, and I just let myself get frustrated. And Megan was like, you needed to communicate that sooner, and you needed to say you were feeling frustrated about that. And I just think we have, with the exception of that recent air, we have gotten so much better. We tend to be, as people, we're not very explosive or like in the moment, have a wider berth with things. And I think all three of us at different points can stew. It can get whatever, then we have to bring it to the surface. And we've gotten a lot better at that, but it doesn't always happen. Just trying to be like more on the forefront of that and saying like, oh, I'm starting to feel this thing that can come up sometimes, versus I'm going to fall on this sword and I'm going to be this person again and let it fester. We have gotten a lot better at that over the years.
We've worked so hard at it. In the conversation Natalie's referencing too, like I was saying that and I did think that was true, but then I was like, maybe I'm freaking gaslighting her and being like, your experience isn't real, you know, or like, you're wrong. And then like, ew, I don't want to gaslight her. So I'm like, okay. So I call her and I'm like, yeah, everything you're saying makes so much sense. And if you did say that, I'm so sorry. And
You validated.
I definitely am not meaning to gaslight you. So it's like, there's so much conflict work all the time to just stay on top of stuff, because it's so easy for stuff to happen and for things to get emotional. And
I'm amazed throughout this conversation on how well it seems like you guys see each other as individuals, and not just see that, but like also honor that. You know, I find is really hard to do in a band, let alone a band of siblings, you know, where you guys have history.
It's hard
like,
to do in a marriage.
You know, yeah, for sure. You know,
Absolutely.
like, you know, we've been talking about like the history that you guys have over the last 12 years. You guys are all well older than 12, so your history extends way beyond 12 years. To be able to do this and have honest, real conversations like this and call each other out, not hold resentment from that time that like Megan didn't give up the swing fast enough for Allie when you guys were like 6, like, is amazing.
it was more like one of us took the larger half of the sandwich, or like the end of the pickle, or
We had to do really intentional work at the beginning because of our family dynamic. I'm 4 years older and they're twins, and there's just so many different things with all of that. I had been doing it a lot longer, and music, sorry. Also being a person, honestly.
It's true.
But like, we had to do a lot of very intentional, listen, how do we switch this up so it's not Natalie is the leader and in charge of everything and you're the little sisters? One of those things was just switching the order of how we stand. That was one way in the beginning. At first, I was playing in the middle, and I was flanked by arguably identical twins, you know, and that really like communicates one thing. Oh, Natalie and her backup. And then also it would have been hilarious if that had been that way, because it would have been missing out on just the unbelievable star power of each of you. So we switched and have Megan in the middle and then Allie and I on the sides. And also that prevents anyone from getting hit in the face with the guitar, which is great.
Oh yeah, safety.
Really good.
Yeah.
Safety first. But yeah, like a lot of conversations had to be intentional to like overcome those lifelong stories.
Yeah. Was the conscious choice to reframe like, oh, Natalie is the leader because she's the oldest. Was that coming from you, Natalie, of like, I don't want to be in a leadership role? Or was that coming from you guys, Allie and Megan, of like, hey, you're not the leader, this is a trio? Which direction did that come from? Or was it kind of both?
It all started by Natalie texting us and being like, do you want to be in a band with me? And we really did think, oh, yeah, backup singers to our older sister? Yes, of
Gotcha.
course. It started like that. But Natalie really was the first person to create room for us to come up and be like, I don't want this to just be my band. I want this to be all of us, which was amazing. And so she created that space and culture. Natalie had been doing it for longer, but Natalie is also much more expressive and very good entertainer and on stage and stuff. It took Allie and I a lot longer to become comfortable on stage, I think, because we were way more reserved and because Natalie's just looks so like cool with her hair and she's the one with the guitar and she's doing all this stuff that everyone's like, well, obviously she's the lead. We would get overlooked a lot early on, like in interviews, people wouldn't really ask us questions. I mean, in general, in business, people would just go to Natalie and be like, well, Natalie, you know, and then we're like, what are we doing here exactly if people aren't seeing this as like an equal thing? And so, yeah, it was both.
In every conversation, I always am like, I have something to say and I have to be conscious. Actually, Al and I did, because both of us can be that person. We actually had conversations in the beginning of like, okay, when a question is asked, let's just be silent. And then Megan was like, I don't want you to do that. There's a lot of conversation around it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not the first one to speak usually. Yeah. But we would have so many interviews where like, I didn't say anything. And I was like, wow, that was weird. Yeah. I'm like, in one way, I want you to make space for me, but also just, don't just wait for me to talk.
Yeah. We're quasi-navigating that a little bit. This is the first thing that we've done that we're like co-equals.
This being the podcast. And I think it is, what are our innate personality types? And then how to honor that. How can we kind of encourage each other and make space? Like I always notice, especially traditional male-female roles in relationships, and when we go to a restaurant, I'm always the one who like walks in first and goes to get the reservation. And like, I'm the one who orders for us. And sometimes I'm like, oh, it's just my personality. Like I'm a younger sister, but my brother was very quiet. And I grew up being like, I'm the one that talked to strangers for us. Probably very similar to Natalie of just like, we listen to these podcasts sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, Michaela, stop talking. Because I'm also just so excited.
I know that feeling. Yes.
I wouldn't be able to make this without her. The podcast I would make would be about 15 minutes long and be like, cool. All right. See you guys.
That was it.
Yeah, but that's the thing of like, but then knowing like sometimes there's always a question or a story on the tip of my tongue. And I'm like, I'm going to wait a second.
Right. Totally. Yeah, it takes intentionality. And I think not hating yourself for your natural instincts. I've had to work on that a lot too. Different voices from my past being like, you're taking up too much space. You're too
much.
I want to be in front of a microphone. I need to not be cruel to myself about that. Not everyone does. And everyone has to play a role. But like within, then also going, and how do I not totally dominate all the time? And it's very meta that I'm talking as I speak about this.
But it sounds like you guys have done so much work in that. And that obviously, again, is like what you guys share. I think I read maybe it was your bio on your last record that all of your therapists played a large role in your record. I know also that therapy talk and all this stuff can feel like very pop culture today, but I'm like, thank God we're all trying to like learn about ourselves, because there really is a thing to like the way humans react emotionally and are wired and all this stuff. I don't know. I'm always a little careful on this podcast to be like, none of us are therapists. We're all artists who are like seeking and then trying to be better versions of ourselves to each other. That sounds like you guys are really on that same path.
Trying.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any last parting thing that you guys want to share, especially with your fans, about this next chapter that's coming up?
Natalie and I are releasing some music that I feel really proud of. First song, it might be out when this comes out, probably. It's called Starting Over at the End. We should send it to you guys if we haven't already. Have we?
We will.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
We'll send it to you.
Cool.
It's
I've only listened to it once because I can't handle it. It makes me cry.
Understood. That's the one that you were saying is coming out kind of in conjunction with the announcement.
We're going to release it at the same time that we make this announcement.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're going to be singing that one in the fall tour as well.
Yeah, so Allie will actually go off stage at some point.
Wow.
I'm probably just going to pull up a chair and sit right next to
I
you.
love that. Please
Make you feel weird.
Tears.
Cheers.
Oh, man.
But yeah, I think like the title and just the whole subject of the song is all about the exact moment and just Natalie came up with that perfect line. We're like, how do you say the end is the beginning in a way that no one has said it before?
Well, maybe someone has said it in that way before.
Only you.
Original thought.
You know what? You're right. I'm such a genius.
Because you're always starting over at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And I love that is going to be part of this last tour that you guys are doing together. I love that Allie's going to step off stage and it's just like a dip your toe into what that would feel like together.
Yeah.
Like the three of you are going to experience that together in the same place and like be able to debrief after. Talk about going to the first show of the tour. I want to be a fly on the wall for the conversation.
Yeah, are you guys playing Nashville on that tour?
Yeah. Please come. We'd love to have you on our
Playing
guest
the
list.
Cannery Ballroom.
Okay.
Ballroom?
It's called something new now,
Why
but
did they
it's
say
always going to
ballroom?
be the Cannery Ballroom. All I know is that there's three of them. They're slightly renamed and they cleaned up the green rooms and the bathrooms.
Oh,
Cool.
nice.
That downstairs is really cool.
Yeah, I think they finally like realized that having like a J-shaped.
It was a bad idea.
Yeah, I think they like straightened it out as you
I
should
hate
with a venue.
when like it's for music, but someone not musical designed it, where you're just like, this is
Yeah, exactly.
We'll definitely look up the date and put it on our calendar
Yeah, we'll
because
be there.
also Becca is opening, right?
Becca.
I
I
love
saw Becca was on this
Sorry.
podcast and I was like listening to the clips. I'm like, they are
Yeah.
so wise every time.
I want to have Becca back on because
It's one of my favorite Michaela clips of the whole
they were like
show.
talking about their new record that was coming out and how like free they felt of pressure and everything because they produced it all and just not attached to results. And I was like, I'm gonna talk to you in a year.
Yes.
I was like, I don't mean to be an asshole. I'm not saying it's gonna be hard for you. I'm just super curious because I felt that way about my last record, and then I had all sorts of feelings about what happened from it. It is like a daily battle to stay in your space. And so I want to have Becca back on.
Yeah. I feel like our brains are constantly looking for the cause and effect. Not saying that Becca feels, I don't know how Becca feels about how it went. It seemed like a smash success to me, and it was a stunning piece of work. When something isn't what you imagine, not for literally any reason at all. Like you were saying earlier, I think back of all the things I thought of, just what is it? What do we need to do different and why? There's always something that you can go, well, I could have done this or I should, la, 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 la.
Yep. There's 1,000 different directions you can take at any time. Writing the song, you can write it 1,000 different ways. You can record it 8,000 different ways.
Yes.
You know, you could release it this way. You could tour it this way. You could run your band this way or whatever. And it's like, you just got to plant a flag. And it gets to a point where it's not necessarily better or worse. It's just different.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've been trying to differentiate for myself this idea of still letting myself dream and that dreams are great. Expectations are not as great.
That's so good.
There it is.
Yeah, because you don't want to lose ambition and effort and hoping.
But you don't want to be so upset if it doesn't look the way you expected it to look or feel the way you expected it to feel. But
Yeah.
That's a
man,
beautiful kind of tie into this whole thing. Like,
yeah.
who knows what it's going to look like, but enjoy the ride and let it be what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, your whole journey is sister band.
I think I can speak for you in this part and just say that like we're incredibly honored that you guys took the time to come on here and be vulnerable and share this big decision in y'all's lives and in the band and all of that. So it means a lot that you guys took the time to be here with us for that.
Yeah, and that you trusted us to have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing it with us. And it means a lot just to like have a space just to talk about it. And yeah, I think the tour itself is going to be terrifying, to be honest, about last one. So also like to all the fans listening to this, hold us dearly, please. There will be tears.
Be tender.
Yeah.
I need to do like therapy sessions being like, how do you not cry when you're emotional?
Nice. Backwards therapy.
Yeah.
Where they're like,
Stifle the emotion. Just push
Yeah.
it down.
Just stuff it. Stuff it. It's
down.
fine.
Thank you guys for doing this with us and just talking with us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Felt very held
Thank you.
and safe in this space to be real. So thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey, real quick before we wrap up today's episode, it takes a lot to produce even a small show like ours, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider taking a minute to check out our Patreon. There's a lot happening over there, all with the intent of growing our community and offering you more resources to navigate a career based on your art more sustainably. You can learn more at the link in the show notes below. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll catch you next time on the Other 22 Hours podcast.